Rachel, who was 20 years old and lived in Camarillo, California, had gone to a bar called Old Huntington near Wagon Wheel Junction. On January 18, 1981, she went home. Then, around 4 a.m., she drove her maid home and never returned. Paper carriers found Rachel in the carport next to her apartment the next day. She had been hurt physically, sexually abused, and choked. According to what they found at the scene, the investigators thought Rachel was attacked as she got out of her car. Let's look at the cold case in which two men were charged with a 1975 Indiana teen's murder. Rachel Zendeja recently moved in with her brother, Roy Rodriguez, with her two young girls, Eva and Monica. She didn't finish high school because she was pregnant with her first child, and she and her husband had just broken up. She had just started taking job training classes at Oxnard College. These classes are paid for by the government and are meant to help stay-at-home moms who suddenly need a job. There were no clues, witnesses, or idea of what was happening. The husband was quickly cleared, and the case had no more clues. Every year, on the date of Rachel's death, her brother called the Ventura County Sheriff's Office and begged for answers. Around 3 a.m. on December 12, 1981, a fire was reported in an apartment building in Oxnard, California, near the 1200 block of West Gonzales Road. When the fire department arrived, they found that someone had started a fire in the living room of an apartment. When they found the body of a young woman naked in the bathtub, they were shocked. Lisa Gondak, who owned the flat, was named as the woman. She had been killed by strangulation. Police thought that the fire was started to cover up a crime and that only matches were used to start it. Lisa's death was caused by her being strangled and suffocated. The night before the fire, Lisa Gondak, who was 21 years old, danced at Old Huntington's bar near Wagon Wheel Junction. She was born in Connecticut, but when she came to California to visit a friend, she chose to stay and move to Oxnard. She moved into her own place and got a job at a nearby mall. When the cops started looking into what happened, they found out that Lisa's neighbors had heard her screaming for help, but no one had called 911. As far as they knew, none of these neighbors saw who went in or out of the flat that night. Again, there was no proof and no witnesses. With breakthroughs in DNA that weren't available in 1981, police would get their first new leads in the case in 2004. They were able to link the killings of Rachel and Lisa to the same person, so now they knew that the same person killed both women. However, even when they checked federal and state DNA records, it didn't lead to anything new. Eventually, the case would go cold again. In December 2019, the Ventura County Cold Case Unit chose to look into genetic genealogy, which is a way to use public DNA sites to find relatives of suspects. Law enforcement hasn't said much about how the case went, but in 2023 they caught their first suspect, Tony Garcia, who was 68. Garcia's DNA was retaken, and it was the same as the DNA found on both bodies. Tony Garcia lives only a few miles away from both crime scenes. He was in the US Navy at the time. After he retired, he became a karate teacher. No one knows if he went to the club where both victims were killed the night before they were killed. At a news conference, the sheriff stated that the suspect had been hiding in plain sight for over 40 years. The police still want to know more about Tony Garcia and are asking anyone who knew him in 1981 to come forward. Roy Rodriguez and his two nieces, both nurses now, finally have answers after waiting for 42 years. They got a call that Rachel's murderer had been caught. Roy never stopped wondering what had happened to his sister Rachel, and he always hoped to find out the truth. He never stopped trying to get justice for his sister. The long arm of the law has helped the Gondak and Zendaya families get what was right. In August 1975, 17-year-old Laurel Mitchell went missing after leaving work at Epworth Forest Church Camp in Kosciuszko County, Indiana. Her body was discovered the following day in a river, indicating that she had drowned. Initially thought to be a car accident, further examination revealed defensive wounds, leading authorities to investigate her death as a murder. Despite extensive efforts, the case remained unsolved for decades. In 2013, a tip implicated John Wayne Lehman and Fred Bandy in Laurel's disappearance. Additional evidence emerged in 2014 and 2019, including statements from witnesses who claimed the two men confessed to killing Laurel at a high school party. In 2020, DNA from an unknown individual was found on Laurel's clothes. In 2023, a DNA sample taken from Bandy matched the evidence. It was discovered that Bandy owned a 1971 Buick Oldsmobile, consistent with a witness report from the night Laurel went missing. On February 6, 2023, Fred Bandy and John Wayne Lehman, 67 years old, were arrested and charged with first-degree murder. They were apprehended without incident and are currently held without bail. The motive behind Laurel's killings remains unclear, as well as whether the suspects have prior criminal histories or if there are other victims involved. After 47 years, Laurel Mitchell's family finally received some closure. Prosecutor Jim Morey expressed his thoughts on the impact Laurel's absence had on her life, mentioning missed milestones such as prom, graduation, and the possibility of marriage and children. He emphasized that while the arrest was a significant step, it marked the beginning of an ongoing process rather than the case's conclusion. Opal Wheel, an 82-year-old widow from St. Petersburg, Florida, was found dead in her bedroom on February 9, 1987. Her sister-in-law discovered her lifeless body after noticing unusual signs, such as a kitchen nightlight still on and a missing glass pane in the front door. The police were called, and upon arrival, they observed significant bruises on Mrs. Wheel's neck, mouth, and face, indicating she had been assaulted. The investigation revealed signs of forced entry, with a broken window pane and a cut phone line. Opal was described as a tall, thin, and well-dressed woman who often walked with neighbors in the morning and afternoon. Her close-knit family included her brother and his wife, who lived nearby and frequently visited her. The investigation conducted in 1987 utilized various tools, including vacuums to collect evidence. This resulted in the retrieval of hair samples. The autopsy determined that Opal had been strangled and subjected to blunt force trauma. She was found in her bedroom wearing only pajamas. Despite extensive efforts, with no significant breakthroughs, the case eventually went cold. However, the investigation was not abandoned. Years later, advancements in DNA analysis techniques allowed detectives to develop a partial DNA profile from the crime scene evidence. The Pinellas County Sheriff's Office Cold Case Unit collaborated with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and Parabon Nanolabs, renowned for gene analysis. Through multiple tests and the construction of family trees, the lab assisted in narrowing down the list of potential suspects to 3 individuals. The breakthrough in identifying the correct person occurred in 2020, bringing renewed hope to the investigation. After eliminating 2 suspects, the police focused on Michael Lubnewski Jr., who lived nearby Opal Wheel at the time of her murder and currently resides in Waveland, Mississippi. In 2022, Pinellas County officers traveled to Mississippi for further investigation. They covertly obtained a DNA sample from Lubnewski in 2 ways: by collecting multiple straws he used at a gas station in July 2022, and by saving utensils he used during a free meal at a restaurant, arranged through a promotional flyer placed on his car by a local detective who knew him well. DNA tests confirmed Lubnewski's presence at the crime scene through hair samples. On January 26, 55-year-old Michael Lubnewski was arrested in Mississippi and extradited to Pinellas County, Florida, where he now faces first-degree murder charges. During interviews, Lubnewski denied being near Opal Wheel's house when the murder occurred and claimed not to recognize her from an old photograph. Although he lived a few blocks away from Mrs. Wheel at the time, he moved shortly after the crime. According to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office, the investigation remains ongoing. Lubniewski was booked into Pinellas County Jail on January 31, 2023, with no bond set as he awaits trial. Opal's family never lost faith and expresses gratitude for the officer's unwavering dedication. Tracy, in particular, hopes her mother's dying wish will be fulfilled and that her aunt will finally achieve justice after 36 long years. The stark contrast between Lubniewski's freedom to walk and breathe and the limited life Opal's aunt experienced is evident. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more thrilling videos. Stay safe and we'll see you in the next one.